We are living in an unprecedented era, a world led by reason, technology, and the relentless advance of artificial intelligence. Everything is laid out in detail, coldly, as if there were no longer any secrets about humanity that science has yet to touch. Yet, in the darkness of late-night bedrooms, where the blue glow of screens falls across a brooding face, have you ever wondered, why do I still feel so empty, so weary, so confused? A troubling truth emerges. Rates of depression and suicide continue to quietly reach new records. According to the CDC's 2021 report, 1 in 5 American adults lives with a mental illness. Among these, anxiety disorders and depression are the most common. Something irrational is at play. Amid this chaos, the return of Carl Jung and his theories may, at first, seem improbable. A Swiss psychiatrist who passed away more than 60 years ago, a man who conversed with ghosts, who trusted in dreams and omens, and who was unafraid to call himself deliberately mad as he searched for the map of the unconscious. To understand this paradox, and to find a way out from the eye of the storm, the gunfire and the loneliness, we are compelled to turn back in time, to enter the cold stone room beside Lake Zurich, where Jung hid away the secrets our age now desperately longs for. It is these secrets that explain why, even now, we remain haunted by Carl Jung. Number 1. The collapse of the perfect image and the crisis of existential exhaustion. To begin the journey into Jung's map, we don't need to look far. Just look at what is closest to you right now. The face you see in the mirror each morning before stepping out the door. Who do you see there? A successful person? A diligent employee? A model father or mother? Or do you see a perfectly arranged version of yourself that society expects you to be? More than a century ago, Carl Jung gave this reflected image a name, one that is both precise and painfully true: the persona, the mask. In Latin, persona referred to the mask worn by Roman actors, allowing them to embody a role and making it clear to the audience who they were: a king, a slave, or a god. Jung never condemned the persona. It is a necessary protective skin that allows us to communicate, work, and integrate into society. But the tragedy of the modern American, and perhaps your own tragedy, lies not in wearing the mask, but in forgetting how to take it off. Take a look at American society today, where hustle culture and toxic positivity are celebrated. We're taught from childhood that we must become the best, the most perfect version of ourselves. On LinkedIn, everyone is a passionate expert. On Instagram, everyone has a happy family and perfect vacations. We pour all our life energy into polishing this mask, turning it into what we might call personality number 1, the rule follower, the achiever, the one who pleases everyone. And when skin and mask become one, we start to suffocate. This is the deep-rooted source of 2 psychological phenomena that are ravaging the American psyche: burnout and imposter syndrome. Through Jung's lens, burnout is not simply working too much. You might work 14 hours a day for something you're deeply passionate about and not feel tired at all. But just 2 hours spent forcing yourself to play a role that isn't yours can drain all your life energy. Burnout is the soul's cry for help when it is forced to sustain a persona that has grown too heavy, draining your psychic energy merely to maintain the facade. And imposter syndrome, that persistent feeling you're a fraud about to be exposed, even when you're truly competent, is the secret fear that the mask will fall. You're afraid others will see the pale, anxious, and imperfect face beneath. You fear that without the persona, you would be no one at all. Carl Jung understood this pain not from books, but from the turmoil of his own childhood. Even as a boy in Basel, Switzerland, Jung deeply sensed the painful divide between 2 selves within him. He called them personality number 1 and personality number 2. Personality number 1 was the schoolboy Carl Jung, the son of a pastor, the child who had to attend school, study math, go to church, behave properly, and try to please his parents and teachers. But Jung soon recognized the falseness that permeated the world of personality number one. He watched his father, Pastor Paul Jung, preach about God's grace every Sunday. But in his father's eyes, he saw emptiness and doubt. He saw the school stuffing him with lifeless formulas. In his memoir, Jung described the suffocating feeling of living among religious rituals and academic dogma. For Jung, such blind obedience was nothing less than the death of the soul, a place where he felt like a stranger slipping into nothingness. It isn't hard to see that same suffocation alive in American culture today, where self-optimization has become a new religion. You open your phone and find endless advice. How to wake up at 5 a.m., how to optimize your brain, how to work 10 times more efficiently. American society encourages you to see yourself as a machine, a piece of software in need of constant upgrades. The unspoken message is, who you are right now is not good enough. You must fix yourself. You must become perfect. But Jung, with his warm, steady voice echoing from the past, would smile and ask you an entirely different question. Have you ever tried stopping and beginning to integrate your own darkness? He offered the idea of self-integration, which stands in complete contrast to optimization. Optimization is about discarding your weaknesses to become perfect. Integration is the journey of the self, a whole being, where you accept that you are both wise and foolish, both holy and shadowed, both strong and vulnerable. Jung believed that as long as we keep chasing the perfection of the persona, we remain at war with ourselves. And in this civil war, the opponent is none other than personality number two, imprisoned deep inside. So, who is personality number two? If number one is the obedient child of the times, then number two is the child of nature, of eternity. For Jung, this was an old sage from the 18th century, a man who understood the language of stones, rivers, and dreams. In you, personality number two is the voice of intuition whispering impossible dreams late at night, the sudden sadness when you see the evening light, the longing to live authentically, to be free to be wild, without needing anyone's permission. But modern society has no place for personality number two. We see it as weakness, as naive romanticism, or worse, as a pathology to be medicated and suppressed. We lock it away in the basement of the unconscious, shut the door tightly, and go on performing the role of the perfect person on the stage of life. But Jung taught us a hard-earned lesson. What you deny does not die. It comes back to collect its due. The revenge of personality number two doesn't come as sudden violence, but as a quiet strike from within. Jung experienced this profoundly at age 12 through an event he called his salvation. It was a summer afternoon in Basel, and Jung was waiting for his friends at the church square. One of them pushed him, and his head struck the curb hard. In that dizzying moment, a thought flashed through Jung's mind like lightning. Now I won't have to go to school anymore. From that day on, whenever Jung sat down to study, or even thought about facing rigid teachers and lifeless math problems, he would faint. The fainting spells were real, painful, and intense. His parents panicked, taking him to renowned doctors, but no one could find a physical cause. They called it a mysterious form of epilepsy. But deep down, Jung sensed a frightening truth. His body and unconscious mind, his personality number two, were joining forces in a strike. It was screaming, "No, I won't let you kill my soul in that school one more day." Pause for a moment and relate this story to your own life. Have you ever felt intense stomach pain every Monday morning before work? Do you get pounding headaches before attending a fake social gathering? Or have you ever been seized by a panic attack in the middle of an important meeting? We're quick to label these experiences as illness, disorder, or weakness that must be erased at once with medication or behavioral therapy. But through the light of Jung's wisdom, those waves of anxiety and depression are not enemies. They are messengers, They are the most urgent and healthy defense mechanism of personality number 2, of your whole self, trying to awaken you. Back to Jung. He didn't choose medication so he could keep being a good student. He chose to listen to his illness, to understand its message, and from there began his journey of self-education and exploration of the vast inner world. And this, too, is the path he laid out for us, the exhausted people of the modern world. Instead of asking, "How can I get rid of my anxiety and become productive again?" try asking in Jung's way, "What is this anxiety trying to tell me about the false life I am living? What part of me longs to live that I have not allowed?" The collapse of the perfect image, then, is not an accident. It is the necessary first step of any true awakening. Because as Jung said, we cannot change anything unless we accept it. To accept that the mask has shattered, and that behind those broken pieces, the journey back to your true self can finally begin. Number 2, war, violence, and the enormous shadow. If in the previous part we saw the inner collapse of the individual when the persona mask falls apart, now, together with Carl Jung, let's step outside, look out the window, onto the streets, the news headlines, and the thick, tense atmosphere of modern America. What do you see? Endless fiery arguments between political factions, horrific shootings that rip apart the peace of schools, or waves of cancel culture, ready to erase someone's existence for a single remark. We often view these events as isolated issues of politics, law, or education. But Jung, whose eyes once witnessed the madness of world war, would shake his head. He saw an invisible thread tying the anxiety in your bedroom to the gunfire out there. When millions of individuals all reject their own pain and imperfection, we do not create a perfect society. We create a monster, or as Jung called it, the rising of the shadow. In Jung's psychological framework, if the persona is the bright face you show the world, then the shadow is the massive black bag you drag behind you. It holds everything you deny, everything society forbids, everything your parents once punished. Envy, lust for power, laziness, selfishness, and those primitive rages. We spend our lives stuffing those ugly parts into the bag, tying it shut, pretending they don't exist. But a simple law always holds true. Energy cannot be created or destroyed, only transformed. The parts of yourself you reject and imprison in the dungeon of the unconscious do not die. In the damp shadows of the psyche, they ferment, mutate, and become savage. A small anger, if acknowledged, is just anger. But if repressed for 10 years, it becomes a rage that can destroy. Every rejected feeling escapes through a subtle and dangerous mechanism that Jung called projection. This is the true root of the evil we see so often in today's headlines. Projection isn't just a distant academic term. It's the small, personal tragedies that unfold every day, every hour, in your own mind. Let's be honest. Have you ever deeply hated someone because they were too showy, too arrogant on social media? You know full well they aren't that talented, and that what they have is just luck. But why do they bother you so much, while others barely notice? Is it truly because they are awful? Or is it deep down, because there's a child within you who also wants to shine, to be seen, to shout out to the world who you are? But that child has been silenced for years so you can play the role of the modest one. Projection works just that ruthlessly. We are most allergic, in others, to the traits we have most harshly cut out from ourselves. When you repress your own weakness, you will despise the complainers. When you suppress your ambition, you will hate the ambitious. When you reject your sensitivity, you will see emotional people as fake. Look at the fierce political polarization in America today. The relentless war between red and blue. It has gone far beyond initial differences in opinions or policies. Among certain extremes, it takes on the character of religious fanaticism and hatred. One side doesn't just see the other as wrong. They see them as an existential threat, as moral filth that must be wiped out. Through Jung's lens, the intensity of this hatred is the true measure of projection. Jung once said something that should startle us awake. Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. If you simply disagree with someone, you debate them. But if you feel the urge to destroy them, to silence them, to erase them from the face of the earth, that's a sure sign that they are carrying your shadow. America, with its remarkable diversity of race, religion, and culture, is the pride of the free world. But it is also the most fertile ground for shadows, to be projected onto one another. People easily project their fears onto immigrants, their anger onto the rich, or their hypocrisy onto leaders. And cancel culture is, at its core, a modern purification ritual. When the crowd gangs up to attack someone on social media, they are searching for a feeling of purity for themselves. By pointing at a scapegoat and declaring, "They are bad," we momentarily feel like the good ones, without the hard work of facing the darkness within. But the real tragedy begins when these individual projections merge and swell into a great flood. Jung called this mass psychosis. Jung did not coin this concept as a mere academic theory. He witnessed it firsthand in the 1930s, with the rise of Nazi Germany. While the rest of the world analyzed Hitler through politics or economics, Jung wrote in his famous essay, Wotan, that Hitler was not a great leader, but a loudspeaker for the unconscious of the German people. Jung saw the German people, a nation renowned for discipline, philosophy, and music, being possessed by an ancient force they had denied for too long, the archetype of Wotan, the god of storms, fury, and frenzy. Excessive repression, together with defeat after World War I and national humiliation, had created an enormous shadow. And when Hitler appeared, he became the hook upon which the German people hung their shadow. They were no longer rational individuals. They became bloodthirsty, believing they were carrying out justice as they slaughtered the Jews. Today, the god Wotan may not wear a Nazi uniform, but that same furious energy still lingers in the atmosphere of America. Mass shootings in the United States are an open wound that never heals. We argue over guns, over security, over mental health. But Jung would urge us to look deeper. The shooters, often isolated individuals rejected by society, are, in truth, vessels that absorb the shadow of the entire community. When a society worships success, denies weakness, and ignores human connection, that psychological waste accumulates. Sometimes, it erupts in the crazed act of an individual, like a boil bursting from toxic overload. Jung once warned us with an image that sends chills down the spine. Civilization is, in reality, just a thin shell laid over chaos. We imagine that with our iPhones, electric cars, and artificial intelligence, we have transcended our wild, animal nature. But that shell is thinner than we think. All it takes is a single shock, a pandemic, an economic collapse, or political agitation, for it to crack and the lava of the shadow to erupt. Carl Jung himself, in 1913, before World War I broke out, had a terrifying spiritual experience that foreshadowed all this. At the time, he had just parted ways with his mentor and spiritual father, Sigmund Freud. Adrift and unanchored, Jung fell into a state of profound confusion. In October of that year, while traveling by train, he suddenly slipped into a waking vision. He saw all of Europe submerged in a sea of blood. Thick, dark red blood rose up, flooding the peaks of the Alps and sweeping away thousands of bodies. At first, Jung thought he was losing his mind. He feared he was slipping into schizophrenia. But in August 1914, when the guns of war thundered and real blood bathed Europe, Jung was shaken to the core. He was not mad. His mind, because of its sensitivity, had picked up the movement of the collective unconscious. He had seen the enormous shadow that Europe was amassing, about to be unleashed in the form of war. Jung's story is a stern reminder for us today. War, violence, and political chaos are not random events that fall from the sky. They are the resonance of millions of personal wounds left unhealed. The outer world is only a mirror of the soul within. An angry nation is made up of angry individuals. A violent world is sustained by people at war with themselves. So, where is the way out? We often think that to bring about peace, we have to protest, change laws, or defeat the opposing side. Those things may be necessary at the societal level. But spiritually, Jung insisted the only true path is this: withdrawing the projection. This is the highest political and humanitarian act you can take right now. When you feel hatred flaring up toward a politician, a celebrity, or that irritating neighbor, pause. Hold back the finger pointing outward and turn it back toward yourself. Ask yourself, that ugly quality I see in them, could it be hiding somewhere in me? Am I being a tyrant with my own children, just as that dictator is with the country? Am I being dishonest in small ways, just as that corrupt official is on a grand scale? The moment you realize that the enemy is within, you stop feeding the monster of collective hatred. You begin to drain the energy from the god of war. Jung once said, "If things go wrong in the world, this is because something is wrong with the individual, because something is wrong with me. Therefore, if I am sensible, I shall put myself right first." Or, world peace does not begin at the United Nations. It begins with you, tonight, in your own bedroom, daring to face your shadow, to stop blaming the world, and to take responsibility for your own darkness. This is a painful, lonely journey, with no applause, but it is the only way to halt the flood of violence waiting to sweep us all away. And this is why Jung's theory of the shadow still haunts us, because it no longer allows us to play the innocent victim. It compels us to grow up. Number 3, the hunger for meaning in the wasteland. When the flames of anger have died down, what remains is only the cold ashes of meaninglessness. Jung once said, "About a third of my cases are not suffering from any clinically definable neurosis, but from the senselessness and emptiness of their lives. This may be described as the general neurosis of our time. Welcome to the wasteland of the modern soul." Have you ever wondered why, in a world overflowing with comfort, where you can order food, watch a movie, or connect with a stranger on the other side of the globe with just a tap, you still feel like a lost nomad? Why are sleepless nights so terrifying? It's not the darkness that's frightening, but the silence. In that silence, you're forced to face an existential question that no technology can answer. What is all this for? Who am I in this universe? This is what Carl Jung called the loss of soul. We are living in a painful paradox. We have maps of the genome, maps of the brain, but we've lost the map that leads us home to our own soul. We wander in the giant supermarket of materialism, collecting fleeting joys, a luxury bag, a like on Instagram, a hit of dopamine from a short video to fill the gaping hole in our chest. But that hole is bottomless, and the hunger for meaning always returns, more ravenous than before. To understand the roots of this tragedy, let's follow Jung back in time to 1925, during his fateful journey to New Mexico, USA. There, he met Ochwiai Biano, Mountain Lake, a chief of the Pueblo tribe. The conversation between these two men, a distinguished Western psychiatrist and a native elder, became one of the most profound stories in the history of psychology. When Jung asked Mountain Lake what he thought of white people, the chief answered bluntly, "See how cruel the whites look. Their lips are thin, their noses sharp. Their eyes have a staring expression. They are always seeking something." What are they seeking? The whites always want something. They are always uneasy and restless. We do not know what they want. We think they are mad. Jung, startled, asked, "Why do you think we are mad?" Mountain Lake replied, They say they think with their heads. And what do you think with? Jung wondered. The chief placed his hand on his heart and said, "We think here." In that moment, Jung realized the full tragedy of the rational Western mind. We have migrated from the heart to the head. We have traded our sacred connection with the universe for the control promised by science and technology. The Pueblo people believed that every morning they must perform rituals to help the father-sun rise. To Westerners, that might seem like naive superstition, but Jung saw something else. He saw that the Pueblo lived in a world overflowing with meaning. Every action, no matter how small, carried cosmic weight. They did not live only for themselves. They lived to maintain the order of the world. They had a place, a sense of dignity, and the absolute peace of those who are embraced by Mother Earth. And us? We know the sun is a burning ball of gas. The earth orbits it by the laws of physics. We know everything, yet we feel nothing. We have been stripped of our role in the universe. We become cold, lonely observers, living lives of accident and meaninglessness. The absence of a great story to lean on is the absence of myth. Don't misunderstand. By myth, Jung did not mean made-up fairy tales. Myths are psychological patterns, archetypes, eternal truths about the human journey encoded in story. Human beings cannot live on bread and Wi-Fi alone. The soul must feed on living myth to survive. Look at the craze for the Marvel Cinematic Universe or Star Wars in America. Why do millions of adults feel so drawn to caped heroes and Jedi with their glowing swords? Is it just entertainment? No. Jung would say, it's because our collective unconscious is starving. In a flat, mundane world, we yearn to see the hero's journey. We long to witness good overcoming evil, to see sacrifice, rebirth, and higher purpose. We project our spiritual needs onto the movie screen because traditional religion and modern society no longer offer us those sacred stories. But the myths we borrow from Hollywood are only temporary painkillers. They cannot save you. You must find your own myth. Jung himself had to go through the collapse of old myths to find his own path. As early as age 11, Jung had a haunting dream, a dream he called the terrible secret that burdened him with guilt throughout his youth. In that dream, he saw God seated on a radiant throne just above the magnificent Basel Cathedral. Then, from that throne, God dropped a giant lump of excrement, smashing through the cathedral dome below. A pious child would find that blasphemous. But for Jung, after the fear, there came an ecstatic sense of liberation. He realized a shocking truth. God, or life itself, is greater than the church. Life cannot be contained within the four walls of rigid dogma. Life includes both creation and destruction, beauty and filth, light and shadow. The church, symbolizing the strict rules of society, must crack open for real life to flow. Today, our church is not just religion, it is materialism, blind faith in technology, and consumption. And Jung's dream is repeating itself. That church is collapsing inside each of us, leaving behind a bewildering emptiness. And to fill that emptiness, Americans throw themselves into addiction. We are addicted to alcohol, to drugs, to shopping, and most recently, to doom scrolling, mindlessly scrolling social media for hours on end. We often look at those struggling with addiction with scorn or pity, seeing it as a moral weakness. But Jung, with the deep compassion of a true healer, saw something else. In a famous letter to Bill W., the co-founder of Alcoholics Anonymous, Jung wrote, his craving for alcohol was the equivalent on a low level of the spiritual thirst of our being for wholeness, expressed in medieval language, the union with God. In Latin, alcohol is spiritus, and it also means spirit, the soul, the breath of life. Jung realized that the addict is not seeking intoxication. They are seeking connection. They are searching for a sense of belonging to something greater than their lonely, isolated self. But they are searching in the wrong place. They drink salt water to quench a thirst for sweetness. The same is true of your mindless scrolling on your phone every night. This is a distorted ritual of prayer. Your finger swipes endlessly, searching for connection, a flash of meaning, a bit of spiritus in the chaotic sea of information. But the more you scroll, the emptier you feel, because no algorithm can replace the living myth of your own soul. We suffer, burn out, and become addicted not because we lack medication or comfort. We suffer because we are spiritual nomads. We have severed our roots from the ground of meaning, wandering aimlessly, trying to silence the soul's screams with material things. And the question Jung leaves for us in this wasteland is, which myth is living through me? So how do we find that story again? How do we reconnect the head, spinning in madness, with the heart, beating with the rhythm of life? The answer lies in the final and most important concept in Jung's legacy, the key to unlocking the way out of this chaos, the journey of individuation. Number 4, the journey of individuation, wholeness instead of perfection. Don't be quick to think that individuation means becoming selfish, isolated, or climbing to the peak of fame to assert your ego. On the contrary, in Jung's view, individuation is the process of releasing the grip of the ego to make way for the self, the true center of the soul. It is the journey of letting go of the drive to be perfect in order to accept becoming whole. Perfection is for the gods. Wholeness is for human beings. Wholeness means you dare to open your arms to embrace both the light and the darkness, both the gold and the mud within you. You no longer deny your anger, your fears, or your weaknesses. You invite them to sit at the round table of your consciousness. Listen to what they have to say and integrate them into your character. In 1927, Jung had a pivotal dream that illuminated this theory. In the dream, he found himself walking through Liverpool, a port city in England, on a stormy, dark, and filthy night. The streets were heavy with coal smoke, the markets noisy and crowded, all radiating the bleakness of earthly existence. But there, in the very center of a shabby square, Jung saw a round pool of water, and in the middle of that pool stood a magnolia tree, blooming brilliantly under a magical pinkish-red light. This magnolia shone not from any electric lamp, but from an inner light of its own. Upon waking, Jung was shaken by the great message of the unconscious. The tree of life, representing the self, does not grow in clean, lofty, heavenly realms. It grows right in the heart of Liverpool, the pool of life, in the midst of the dirtiest, messiest, most mundane parts of reality. The tree can only bloom in splendor when its roots are sunk deep into the black mud of life. The Liverpool dream is a profound reminder for each of us. Don't wait for your life to be perfect before you begin to live happily. Don't wait until all your debts are paid, your children are perfectly behaved, or your mind is completely at peace to seek serenity. True peace, wholeness, lies right in the very chaos you are facing. The flower of awakening blooms from heartbreak, from work pressure, from sleepless nights. As long as you dare to put down roots and transform those struggles rather than rejecting them. But how can we bring about this transformation in everyday life? It begins with what Jung believed in as spiritual pragmatism. Once, a student asked Jung about going up the mountain to seek enlightenment. Jung replied, in essence, "You cannot individuate on the summit of Everest." Why? Because on that lonely, snowy peak, there is no one to challenge you, no one onto whom you can project your shadow, no bills to pay, no crying child to soothe. You might think yourself a saint, but in truth, you are just running away. True enlightenment must be forged in the fires of ordinary relationships. Jung proved this philosophy with his own hands. In 1923, after his mother's death and major shifts in his thinking, Jung bought a wild piece of land in Bollingen by Lake Zurich and began to build a stone tower with his bare hands. He carved the stones himself, mixed mortar, raised the walls. There, he lived without electricity or running water, chopping wood and cooking for himself. For Jung, building the Bollingen Tower was not just a hobby or retreat. It was therapy. He realized that when his hands touched cold stone, when his body sweated chopping wood, his mind was healed. He wrote, "I must achieve a concrete, tangible life to counterbalance the abstract things in my head." So what's the lesson in this for you? It is to bring the sacred into the most profane things. Don't seek healing in expensive, faraway retreats if you cannot yet wash the dishes with presence. When you wash the dishes, feel the water. That is purification. When you face the anger of your partner, don't react instantly with old habits. Pause, breathe, and recognize. This is your chance to meet your own rising shadow. This is the moment you are laying a stone for your own Bollingen Tower. Don't run away from reality, however harsh it may be. Transform your pain, your failures in marriage, or your work stress into the prima materia for the alchemy of the soul. Ancient alchemists believed that pure gold is forged from the basest metals. Likewise, Jung believed that a great personality is shaped from the most ordinary sufferings. The journey of individuation, ultimately, is not about becoming someone else. It is the journey of coming home to the true self you abandoned before the world told you who to be. It is painful, yes, of course. But the price of not making this journey is 1,000 times higher. It is the price of a life never truly lived. And as Jung said, with all the wisdom of a man who walked through both hell and heaven, I'd rather be whole than good. Because in wholeness, there is life. But in fake goodness, there is only repression and the slow death of the soul. Carl Jung has been gone for more than half a century. His body has returned to Mother Earth by the quiet shores of Lake Zurich. But the flame he lit has never gone out. He did not leave us a new religion or impose rigid dogmas for us to obey. His greatest legacy is an attitude toward life. The profound courage to turn away from the clamor of the crowd and look deeply into the abyss within oneself. In his final days, Jung likened individual life to the fleeting shoots that sprout from an eternal root. The rhizome, the shoots, our egos, our fame, these physical bodies may wither and fall with the harsh winters of time, but the life within the rhizome is immortal. We are finite moments in an infinite stream. Understanding this, we cease to fear the chaos of the world or the fragility of our own existence. The outer world may be burning in the frenzy of war and division, but the true temple, the safest refuge, has always been within you. So, do not fear the strange dreams that visit you at midnight. Do not run away from unexplained sadness or lonely silences. These are not symptoms of illness. They are invitations, letters from the soul, calling you into the journey toward wholeness. And remember the whisper of that great guide, a compass for our stormiest days, who looks outside dreams, who looks inside, awakens. And now, more than ever, the world needs those who are awake, like you. On today's journey inward, which concept from Carl Jung made you feel most seen or understood? Are you wrestling with a flawless persona, facing a furious shadow, or searching for your own myth? Please share your story in the comments below, because naming your pain is the very first step toward healing. If this video touched a hidden part of your soul, please give it a like to spread this message of awakening further. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so we can keep exploring the mind together. Right now, click the video on your screen to continue the journey of nurturing a whole self. Thank you for listening, and until we meet again, to all awakened souls,